At the stroke of midnight, under the glow of the moon, a gunshot ripped through the tranquil aura surrounding Wagner Mansion, shattering the silence like glass. The sound reverberated through the halls, echoing the terror that had unfolded within. Mr. Smith, the loyal butler to Mr. Wagner, was gripped by an icy fear as he dashed towards his master's quarters, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum of impending doom. With each step, he prayed that his worst suspicions would not be realized. Breathless and filled with fear, Mr. Smith burst into the room, a silent plea on his lips, begging the god to spare his beloved master from harm. But as the scene unfolded before his horrified eyes, his very soul was rent asunder by the nightmare that lay before him. There, upon the cold, unforgiving floor, lay the lifeless body of Mr. Wagner in the crimson tide of his own life-blood. The stench of gunpowder hung heavy in the air, a bitter testament to the violence that had torn apart the serenity of the night. In the stillness of Mr. Wagner's hand lies his beloved firearm, the very instrument he chose to bring his life to its final chapter. As the weight of the truth bore down upon him, Mr. Smith could only stand frozen in horror, his mind reeling with unanswered questions and his heart heavy with grief for the tragic fate that had befallen his cherished master. Detective Jack William arrived at the Wagner Mansion in the dead of night, the sprawling estate now teeming with uniformed officers. It was to be expected, Mr. Wagner was no ordinary man. Ranked as the third wealthiest individual by Forbes in the year 2050, his demise was bound to draw attention. Entering Mr. Wagner's room, Jack found that the body had been relocated, the area fenced off with yellow tape. A police inspector approached, extending a hand in greeting. "Hi, I'm Inspector Matthew," he introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Inspector Matthew," he introduced himself. Returning the handshake, Jack replied, "Hello, I am Detective William." "I've heard plenty about you," Matthew smiled warmly. "You're quite the legend in our precinct." Jack chuckled modestly. "I just try to do my job." "Well, your reputation precedes you, Detective William," Matthew continued. "Your dedication and diligence are commendable." As the conversation unfolded, Matthew leaned towards a conclusion. "But I don't see much to investigate here. Seems like a clear case of suicide." Jack nodded in agreement, "But according to protocol I still have to report it." "Of course," Matthew agreed. "Especially considering it's Mr. Wagner. That guy is insanely rich and a public figure. I don't know why this type rich bastard commits suicide. If I had money like him, I would never want to die. I mean, you can go wherever you want, whenever you want, buy whatever you want. Why do you want to die?" Perhaps for Mr. Wagner, money held a different value. For us money is something big, but for someone like Mr. Wagner it is maybe nothing more than a piece of paper. "So, any thoughts on what might have pushed him to do it?" the inspector asked. Jack tilted his head in thought, then remarked, "You know, I have a feeling it might have to do with his dead wife. The guy was head over heels for her, you know." "Yeah, I know that. This guy treated her woman like a queen." After all, this dude almost died in search of emberglow lilies in the Amazon jungle just to give them as an anniversary present to his wife on the 10th marriage anniversary. Jack nodded. Yeah, that incident kind of became an internet sensation. Every major newspaper covered that news. Matthew laughed, remembering his own wife's reaction to the story. You know, my wife read one of those articles and she goes, "You never go on crazy adventures for me." And I'm like, "Honey, I love you, but risking my life for flowers? That's rich people's nonsense." Hearing this, Jack starts to laugh. After a while, he sobered up and posed a question. "Did you search the place?" "Well, my men already searched the place, but didn't find anything special. Just got a diary in Mr. Wagner's desk." "Did you read the diary? Maybe the motive is written there." "Not yet," replied Matthew. "How about we read it together? Maybe we will find the reason. I want to know what drives a billionaire like Mr. Wagner to kill himself." "We can do that," said Jack. "Let's go to my office. We can read the diary there." With that settled, the two officers wrapped up their work at the scene and made their way to Jack's office. Jack handed Matthew a cup of freshly brewed coffee before settling down beside him. "Okay, Inspector, let's start reading the diary. I wanna know what kind of secret Mr. Wagner is hiding in his diary." Matthew opens the diary and starts reading the diary out loud, and his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Whoever reading this diary know this. After finishing reading this, you will have two choices. You can either expose me to the entire world, or you can burn this diary and my secrets will be a secret forever. Either way, I don't care. I just don't want to carry this burden to my grave. Now it's your burden." Jack takes a sip of the coffee, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "That's a weird way to start a diary," says Jack. Matthew chuckled. "Mr. Wagner sure knows how to grab the attention. He is a true businessman. Now I am curious too. What kind of secret is Mr. Wagner hiding?" "Don't stop at the first page," Jack urged. "Start reading." "Sure." Matthew starts to read out loud. "My name is James Wagner. With my surname you already understand I am a member of the famous Wagner family. I was the sole inheritor of the biggest empire created by my grandfather Robert Wagner and carried by my father James Wagner. So the math is simple. After my father, I will be the one who will carry my Wagner family's legacy. There is just a small problem. I am a worthless, talentless piece of shit." Matthew paused, allowing the weight of those words to sink in before continuing. "I didn't know that until I was 18. That was my fault actually. My little accomplishment was celebrated like I won the whole world. This made me a little arrogant. But when I turned 18, I realized, I am not a talented boy. My peers, friends' achievements are so much more than mine. What I once thought were achievements were merely celebrated mediocrity. I am just a brat who is living on his father's money and thinking that he is talented. I got severe depression, and top of that I was diagnosed with ADHD. I kept that secret from my parents because I didn't want them to worry. I tried so many things. Sports, singing, arts etc. but nothing works. I just stopped trying and tried to live my life normally. It's kind of sad, says Jack. Being mediocre is just a curse in men's life. Doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Matthew replies with a sad voice, it's true, man. Sometimes it seems like no matter how much money or privilege you have, you're still stuck in being average. Jack nods in agreement and says, but I think it's just a part of life. Yeah, I think so, says Matthew. Then he resumes reading. Passed my high school with a decent grade and was admitted into a prestigious college of course with the help of my father's money. I couldn't even think about getting admission to a college like Lumino's University with my grades. But at that time, I just stopped thinking about it. I started my college life and there I met Olivia. It wasn't love at first sight, but I started to love her as I started to get to know her. We were best friends, or at least in her point of view. Everything was going perfectly. John came. John was my childhood friend. John is a true perfectionist, always aiming for the best in all he does. His characteristic is totally opposite of mine. While I settled for average success, John aimed to be the best in everything he pursued. We were supposed to go to the same university at the same time. But his father wasn't as rich as mine. Besides, he will not use his father's money for his college. So he studied for 1 year, gave his SAT exam, scored 1,585 and got a full fund scholarship in Lumino's University. So he came to my college a semester after me. I was so happy to see him. I introduced him to Olivia and I think that was my biggest mistake. They started spending time together. It wasn't long before they forged a bond, a connection so profound it could only be described as love. In front of my eyes I saw my love to fall in love with another John. Whenever I saw Olivia hanging out with John or sharing the same straw for a drink or smiling at John's joke, it felt like someone stabbed my heart with a knife. I used to cry every night. I thought if I stopped seeing Olivia I could get over her. But that felt impossible. Whenever I tried to ignore them, John always did something to make me join them. It felt like John indirectly saying, "Hey, your love is mine, I wrapped her around my fingers with my charms and you have to watch it." My sorrow gradually turned to hatred for John. My best friend, the only guy who I considered as my brother, became the person I hated most. Every word from John felt like a taunt, a cruel reminder of what he had lost. The hatred festered, dark thoughts whispering sinister solutions. I couldn't stand him and my hatred became so great that I was thinking of killing him. Fate, however, took a grim turn. One day John got arrested. A 9-year-old girl was raped in that city and police arrested him as a suspect. Someone tipped the police that John is the main culprit, and when police searched John's room, they found child pornography in John's computer. So naturally he became the biggest suspect. That incident destroyed John's reputation. His picture-perfect image started to crumble. He was released after some days because police were able to find the real culprit. but the damage was done. He may not be the real culprit of that crime, but police found child pornography in his computer which labeled him as a pedophile. Our college cancelled his scholarship. Olivia broke up with him, his family disowned him. He was jumped on twice by some locals and got beaten brutally. Everyone started to see him as garbage to society. I was enjoying his downfall. Everything that happened to him felt like a blessing to me. Moreover, because of his break with Olivia, I became more close with Olivia and eventually we started dating. Then one day I got a phone call from the police. John had committed suicide in a motel. He cut his wrist vein and bled to death. He wrote 3 letters before suiciding. One for his parents, one for Olivia and one for me. His parents refused to take the body and also tore the letter without reading it. Olivia also didn't read his letter. I was the only one left. I read his letter and that shook me to my core. In his letter he wrote that when he was accused of that heinous crime he wasn't afraid because he knew he was innocent, but what broke him was when I told him not to show his face. I was the only one who he considered as his friend, and when he saw that I also thought that he was guilty, that broke him. So he decided to take this path. After reading his letter, a wave of guilt crashed over me because I was the one who planted those videos on John's computer. It was a twisted plan fueled by jealousy and hatred. I knew if I called the police anonymously and told them the suspect was in John's house, they would definitely search that house, and when they find those videos on John's computer they will arrest John as a suspect, and after that incident our college will revoke his scholarship. At that moment, blinded by envy, I couldn't see beyond my desire to bring John down. But reading his heartfelt letter shattered my facade. What had I done? I had betrayed the trust of someone who considered me a friend, all because of my own insecurities. After that day, I couldn't escape nightmares. Every night, I saw John's face, reminding me of what I'd done. Sleep became hard, replaced by constant worry. But Olivia was my comfort. Her being there helped me feel calm sometimes, even with everything else going on. But when Olivia passed away, it felt like I had lost my anchor. With no reason to carry on, the nightmares intensified, gnawing at my sanity. Now I have made a decision. I accepted that I had become the villain of my own story, but if it meant I would get Olivia for the rest of my life, I would embrace that role without hesitation. Now it's time for my redemption. Matthew finishes reading the diary. The shock is evident on his face as he sits back in his chair, the weight of its revelations pressing heavily upon him. He tries to rush to the door, but Jack grabs him firmly by the hand. "Where are you going?" asks Jack. "To report it," Matthew replies urgently. "Do you understand what will happen if you expose Mr. Wagner?" shouts Jack. "Wagner Enterprise will fall down and thousands of people will lose their jobs. It will be havoc. But it is wrong if we hide it," Matthew protests, his determination unwavering. "My friend, Mr. Wagner, and John are both gone. Exposing this now will only create more trouble. Let's keep it between us," Jack urges, his tone urgent. Then with swift decisiveness, Jack takes the diary from Matthew and ignites it with his lighter, the flames quickly consuming the pages. Matthew watches in silent resignation as the truth is engulfed by fire, lost to the ashes of secrecy. It is almost 2 a.m. in the night. As Jack sits in his office chair late into the night, a faint smirk plays on his lips. "Thought I was the only one wrecking lives for love," he mutters to himself. "Guess I've got company." He rises from his seat and wanders over to the window, peering out into the darkened sky. "Don't sweat it, Mr. Wagner," he murmurs softly. "Your secret's safe with me. I'll take it to the grave, alongside mine. Nobody's gonna know we're the bad guys." With those words hanging in the air, Jack stands there, a solitary figure framed against the night, his thoughts swallowed by the silent expanse beyond the glass.